Before we get going, I want to make sure you heard about a special conversation we dropped last week on Friday that's exclusive to Slate Plus members. In it, I talked with Tom, whom you heard in our advice episode about living at a crossroads. He was struggling with isolation because a seizure disorder is preventing him from driving, and he doesn't know if it's forever or a temporary condition. I called Tom back. And in your feed in that exclusive conversation, you can hear the two of us talk together with Anna Zevarts, a disability advocate who doesn't drive because of an eye condition. She just wrote a new book called When Driving is Not an Option, Steering Away from Car Dependency. I learned a lot of things in our conversation, but it was also really special to hear Anna and Tom connect after Tom had sounded so stranded when he first reached out to us for advice. This is our first exclusive Slate Plus member-only drop in your feed, and there will be more of them. It is part of our effort to try to encourage you to join in and support the financial sustainability of our show. To become a Slate Plus member, just click Try Free at the top of the Death, Sex, and Money show page on Apple Podcast, or visit slate.com/DSM Plus to get access wherever you listen. Today's new episode also started from a listener email. It arrived in my inbox a few months back, and in it, the listener we're calling Vivian told me about an obsession with food and weight that had morphed into an obsession with money and budgeting. She wrote, "The restriction that once applied to calories found a new outlet in my approach to personal finance. In the same way I meticulously tracked calories during my eating disorder, I now manage my budget." This was interesting to me, how an instinct to control and restrict showed up in these different ways that are also similar in that you have to eat and you have to deal with money every day of your life. We reached out to record an interview with Vivian, and our conversation got me thinking about the power of numbers. What happens when you gamify something essential in your life until it becomes an abstraction on a scoreboard? Sometimes those numbers can help us look away from something painful, like a declining parent or difficulty at work or school. Other times, the numbers build a fortress, cutting you off from other people, and also from a sense of ease. In this episode, you'll hear how Vivian goes in and out of that fortress. It's not a place she's entirely left, but it's not where she lives either. She's intentionally forging her way out, changing her career from tech to become a therapist, a career that's all about connection and language, even if she still is occasionally called back to tracking and counting, the rhythms of math that make her feel safe. And so I want to let you know this episode references tracking weight and calories as we talk about living with an eating disorder. Please take care while listening.
You never forget how to have an eating disorder. You never forget to be obsessive about your finances. It's just other things happen in life and you realize that you want to reshuffle your priorities. But I will always have the muscle and I will always be able to go back to this habit of mine if I'm looking for reasons to feel bad about myself.
This is Death, Sex, and Money, the show from Slate about the things we think about a lot and need to talk about more. I'm Anna Sale.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds, and I'm here with Keith, co-star of my upcoming film, If, only in theaters May 17th. Do you want to tell people the big news? All right, I'll do it. Sign up now and you'll get unlimited for $15 a month and 6 months of Paramount Plus Essential Plan on us. MintMobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 equivalent to $15 per month. Unlimited over 40 gigabytes per month. Face lower speeds. Videos at 480p. Active Mint customers by 531.24 get 6 months of Paramount Plus Essential Plan. Auto renews after 6 months. Offer ends May 31st, 2024. Separate Paramount Plus registration required. Terms and conditions apply if rated PG.
A listener we're calling Vivian is 32, living in California. That's not her real name. She works in tech and also recently started taking classes to become a therapist. We connected over video chat on a sunny day in March. And when we did our standard sound check, usually asking a guest what they ate for their last meal, things sounded good and clear. Can you speak a little bit more? Let's see.
Sure.
Have you had lunch today?
I have had lunch today.
What did you have?
I had a frozen meal because I was low on time.
Uh-huh.
I've tried to get off of frozen meals for a while, but they were on sale.
But as we recorded throughout our conversation, we kept getting interrupted by sounds from outside, sawing from a construction site nearby or a truck rumbling down the street. Being bombarded by background noise is something Vivian is used to, but usually it's in her own head, counting and running tallies. Vivian said she was the most obsessed with tracking her personal finance a few years ago. It was the first thing she thought about when she woke up. Her go-to was a financial planning app called Mint.
It would be the first app that I would open when I picked up my phone. And we're talking checking it in spurts of like 15 minutes. So if I haven't spent anything, there's really no reason for the app to change. The other part was sort of creating data visualizations of where my money was going.
Okay, wait. Are you do you create data visualizations as part of your...
Not professionally, no.
Okay, so you would create amateur data visualizations.
Amateur data visualizations of like, where is my money going? I would create these different, I would create a Sankey diagram. Then with that same data, I'd create a pie chart. And then with that same data, I'd create a bar graph. And it was overkill, but it was also the repetitive nature of doing it.
What would happen, like, after, say, you discovered through a data visualization that you thought you were spending too much money on things like eating out? Like, then how would that affect the way that you lived your life in the next few days after making that?
I would say after any sort of data party that I had, I would always feel bad about myself. So it was never, I would never do this and say, seems like I'm spending just the right amount of money on this thing. It was always cutting it by a fifth or 20%. Like, let's just challenge myself and see what I could do if I can spend less.
So in your mind, there's this logic that any money that you have spent is money that you could have not spent.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so there's that piece. And I don't know if you know this, but Mint is getting rid of their personal finance app in like 5 days. And I don't know what to do with myself. I mean, part of me thinks that this is going to be good in the long run for me. But part of me is very scared as to what is going to happen now for me.
Because even now, it's like a go-to app for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've already invested in a different app. And it shows you so much more than Mint ever did. And Mint showed a lot. Mint can show you like how much you spent on December 17th on restaurants. And this other app, it dives even deeper than that. And that's really going to like get the wheels turning in my head.
I see.
About all of the different ways I could spend even more time on my personal finances. I don't remember what that form of art is called, where you like you create something in sand and then you get rid of it.
Yeah, like
to
sand art.
Remind you of the temporality of life. Creating those data visualizations. It is kind of like that, but a lot more capitalistic.
Yeah. I was just noticing, I think it was the sound of like a saw nearby. Is there construction happening nearby?
I guess so. I'm so sorry. I'm going to try and move to another room. Is that okay with you?
Vivian told me a few times throughout our conversation that she feels some distance from the worst of her obsession. But then she would say something like how Mint was going out of business that made me realize how easy it is to dip right back in.
All right.
Okay.
Hopefully this will be better.
Like noises from outside a window, an intrusive thought can take you out of the moment.
I'm near a window that's closed, but there's a garbage truck going by now. I'm sorry about this.
This is okay. That's okay. Like, where do you think, if you were to to try to pinpoint how you learned that if you are spending money, you are doing something that is bad and dangerous. Where do you think it came from?
Oh my God, where do we begin? I think I remember from a very small age trying to make myself feel small and trying to make myself take up the least amount of space possible. And I would also say, like, both of my parents are immigrants. They had a business that they owned together, a small business that they owned together. And they were very much conservative in the way that they used money. So whenever conversations were had, it was always like, there's not enough of something. And I think part of it made me feel like if things are that bad, then I don't want to be more of a burden than I already am. Mm-hmm. Then I'm not going to ask for anything to eat at the restaurant, or I'm not going to ask for a drink to go with my food, and then that kind of snowballed into becoming a feeling like I was a financial burden on other people.
Vivian's dad was from Israel and her mom was from Japan. They met in the U.S. when they were young, and they owned a few hair salons. Vivian's dad got sick when she was 15.
I remember the first time I realized he was sick, his doctor had given him a note to refer him out to someone, and the doctor had kind of scribbled. And so my dad had asked me, hey, do you know can you read this? And I was like, it looks like multiple myeloma, which is a word that I didn't know. But we Googled it together. And in like real time, as I was Googling, we saw that it was a cancer. And that's how we both found out together. And then after that, we never had a conversation.
How did your dad handle the emotions of going through cancer treatment?
He became quite mean. And even to this day, like, I don't know to what degree the drugs have an effect on his, like, neurology or his brain and his mood and his hormones. He became, like, kind of aggressive in the way he would speak to people and the way he'd speak to my mother. It came to the point where people were coming to me asking me if I was okay. And that was like kind of embarrassing that someone felt like they needed to look out for me or my mom. But it also, in a weird way, it was so reassuring in the sense that, like, okay, I'm not crazy. My dad is actually like kind of mean. And I'm not the only one who sees it.
Vivian, I'm going to ask you again. I'm still hearing kind of loud background. I think it's more loud in this next room that you've moved to. Do you mind going back to that first room?
I haven't heard the saw, so I think that was a fluke. I hope it was, but I will move back.
Okay, cool. When Vivian's dad got sick, the noise in her head that told her she needed to take up less space got louder. After a trip abroad between her freshman and sophomore year of college, she became very restrictive about the kinds of food she would eat.
I actually thought I had, like, binge eating disorder. Mm-hmm. Because I would, like, think to myself, have I eaten too much broccoli today? Or, like, have I eaten too much salad without dressing today? And so that was, like, I became, like, kind of paranoid, like, maybe I'm eating too many vegetables. But basically what my eating looked like was it was one food group, and that was usually some sort of raw vegetable. One of the symptoms of anorexia as well is, like, just odd food pairings. So, like, mixing things together. I would mix tea with coffee, and I would mix hot sauce with apples, like, really odd combinations of things.
Would you eat with other people when you were at school?
Never, no.
Where would you eat?
So I'd get a to-go thing from our dining hall, and then I would eat it in my room. And I had a single at the time, so I would just eat it in the privacy of my own room.
I think this is very common.
Yeah.
I can remember this from dorm life so clearly. Did you have a lot of friends in college?
I had a couple of good friends who I really put through the ringer. Some very, I'll say, poorly planned interventions happened. There were some friends that handled it a lot better than others. But I think, I would say for the most part, I do not think of college as a good time in my life. I was the recipient of a full ride scholarship, the condition of which was I didn't get to really choose where I went. The college chose me and said, we'll give you a full ride. And I was like, okay.
Congrats.
Thanks. And gosh, I would have never chosen that place for myself if I could have. It was a huge culture shock to me. I felt so unprepared academically. And I was obviously in the throes of a really serious eating disorder as well.
You were in the throes of an eating disorder, and your father was still in treatment
And
for a
that
very
part.
serious illness.
That part too, yep.
Near his death, do you still remember that edge of meanness?
You know, it's funny. I saw him go to my mom, and this might have been like a month and a half or 2 months before he died. And he just hugged her and he was like, I'm so sorry. And she cried, and I don't know if he cried. I was across the room when this was happening. I was so sad for him that this came so late. I never got an apology. But I think he, in hindsight, and this is a huge reason why I am going back to school to become a therapist, I think he was absolutely petrified. And he didn't know how to handle that. And he didn't know how to have these conversations and let people in.
Coming up, Vivian moves away from her obsession with tracking food and replaces it with personal finance.
One time I forgot to pay a bill and I called the credit card company, like pleading with them. And I was like, this is the first time this has ever happened in my life. I'm so sorry. And they're like, you're fine. It was a $15 credit card bill or something like that.
I have an important update for you about our episode last week with the leaders of the Health Wagon in Wise, Virginia, Teresa Owens Tyson and Paula Hill Collins. After we released the episode, we learned about some recent local reporting about outsized pay packages at the Health Wagon by the Cardinal News in Roanoke, Virginia. Specifically, that CEO Teresa Owens Tyson's total compensation had nearly doubled in the last 2 years to more than $500,000 in 2022, the last year available. Clinical Director Paula Hill Collins saw a 39% jump during that period to more than $300,000. The Cardinal News story noted that CEO pay is unusually high for Virginia, more than twice what other executives across the state earn for comparable work. The salaries are also very high compared to the median annual household income of the rural area where Teresa and Paula serve, which is about $40,000. We asked Paula and Teresa for comment, and we received a statement attributed to the organization. It said, quote, maintaining a close connection with our patients, we understand the unique challenges they face, and it is troubling to think individuals would take issue with the pay of our female executive team. It noted that the local board unanimously approved the compensation packages and continued, we stand firm in our belief that exceptional talent, decades of experience, and deep commitment to our community should be compensated competitively. The same day we received that statement, the Virginia legislature pulled $800,000 of committed line-item funding for the Health Wagon. We are continuing to follow the reporting by Emily Schabacher at the Cardinal News, and I regret that we missed her initial reporting about their executive pay when we were finalizing our episode for release. There's a link to her reporting in our show notes this week, and I'll keep you posted on what happens next in my newsletter at annasale.substack.com. This episode is brought to you by Fail Better, David Duchovny's new podcast with Limonada Media. On Fail Better, David, who has experienced both low and high-profile failures throughout his life, explores the vast world of failure, how it holds us back, propels us forward, and ultimately shapes our lives. Each week, he will chat with guests like Ben Stiller, Bette Midler, and more about how our perceived failures have actually been our biggest catalyst for growth, revelation, and even healing. Through these conversations, he hopes listeners can learn how to embrace the opportunity of failure and fail better together. Fail Better is out now wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Fail Better, David Duchovny's new podcast with Limonada Media. On Fail Better, David, who has experienced both low and high-profile failures throughout his life, explores the vast world of failure, how it holds us back, propels us forward, and ultimately shapes our lives. Each week, he will chat with guests like Ben Stiller, Bette Midler, and more about how our perceived failures have actually been our biggest catalysts for growth, revelation, and even healing. Through these conversations, he hopes listeners can learn how to embrace the opportunity of failure and fail better together. Fail Better is out now wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Dahlia Lithwick, host of Slate's legal podcast, Amicus. If you're listening to this show, you might be interested in Amicus's live show that we're hosting in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, May the 14th. My colleague, Mark Joseph Stern, and I will be talking to some amazing guests, including Sherilyn Ifill and a sitting state Supreme Court justice, all about how originalism, a relatively recently invented way of interpreting the Constitution, has taken over the Supreme Court and radically reshaped the law. It's been doctrinal rocket fuel for the conservative legal movement and facilitated the rolling back of abortion rights, the expansion of gun rights, and the obliteration of the separation of church and state. And as another wildly consequential Supreme Court term careers to its end, the court's originalists are on a tear. But there's something you can do about it, and we hope you'll join us in D.C. on May 14th to explore the possible pathways out of the current situation. Go to slate.com/Amicus Live for tickets.
This is Death, Sex, and Money from Slate. I'm Anna Sale. When Vivian was in college, administrators took notice of her weight loss and urged her to attend an outpatient program near the school. Vivian went and ate meals there, begrudgingly. At the time, and looking back, she's not sure it helped much. She didn't find a sense of community with the others getting treatment there. And when she was back on campus, she resumed her very restrictive eating habits.
It was just like a surreal, disconnected experience. And it was also entirely secret. So no one really knew I was like going to the hospital at that time.
But then Vivian graduated, and even without really trying to recover, the challenges of making it in the real world started to crowd out her obsessive thoughts about food.
I think anorexia requires so much stamina, and I just could not keep up with it. I just couldn't keep up with the routines and the strictness. I mean, at that point in my life, I needed to, find a full-time job, and I didn't have the mental and physical stamina to do it.
Or you could say other things started mattering more.
Exactly.
When did you notice some of the strict systemic thinking from your eating? When did you notice how much it was carrying over to your money management?
I think it was a shock to me that people would go to a grocery store and like not know what they were buying until they got there. So like these things that I would have conversations with friends and they would say something that was completely benign or normal to their life. Like, I'm going to go to the grocery store today because I have nothing to eat at home, or because I want to try this new recipe. And that was when I was like, the fact that you're okay spending money on taking this risk as it relates to the food you're going to make today is wild to me. And the fact that like I didn't really have that flexibility in my brain, that was when alarm bells started going off of like, oh, maybe these two are in the eating and the financial spending are in dialogue with one another.
Uh-huh. And it was in noticing that people do things really differently.
Yeah. And like had like a carefree way about it too.
Yeah. Because the thing I'm wondering about with food versus money, when you become really strict with food and withhold food from yourself, you can't hide it eventually because your body changes. And with money, it's easier to keep the secret going, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. And it's also like rewarded.
In what way?
Like if you watch a commercial for anything regarding banking or spending, it's like, here's ways to save money. Here are hacks that you might not know about. So like if I was someone who was really good at saving my income, I could tell someone that unashamedly and they'd be like, wow, that's actually really impressive.
Uh-huh. Like you are so responsible.
Yeah. Like I started saving money for retirement when I was like 20 years old and making $20,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Like pretty impressive. At the same time, like I had no business saving for retirement when I wasn't allowing myself to buy groceries.
Uh-huh. And when you think about the fear that sort of is at the root of your money vigilance or money obsessiveness, like what is the fear? Is the fear that you will end up with not enough, that you will have wasted money? Is it related to like retirement? Like what is the fear?
I think I wish it was just one of those. I think it's a combination of all of it. It's just a fear that it might all be gone one day.
Yeah. And is there, when you think back on sort of your young adulthood with like compassionate eyes and think about something that you didn't allow yourself to buy that you wish you would have, like what comes to mind? Like what did you skip?
Oh my gosh. So many. I mean, I still don't allow myself things today, but it's a really good question because I remember so vividly the things that I didn't allow myself because I have so many regrets about money I did not spend. And I think a lot of people are like, I regret buying that. I regret not buying so many things. I remember there was this concert that I wanted to go to. My second favorite artist in the world was the opener, and my first favorite artist in the world, it was his concert. And I was like, $40, too much, can't go.
Oh, $40. It wasn't like Bruce Springsteen and $600 for a ticket. It was $40?
No, it was $40. And I was like, I think I'm going to sit this one out. Thank you. To this day, I have one pair of shoes that I wear. They have a lot of holes at the bottom.
Like today, as we're talking now, you have
today.
one pair?
Yeah.
Why? Why now? Knowing that you're saying, I have holes in my shoes.
I don't know. I don't know. I wish I knew. I wish I could be like, just buy the shoes. But it just feels like I'm spending so much money in other parts of my life that shoes are not what I need right now until like I get some sort of cut on the bottom of my foot, until it's really urgent.
Until you get a cut.
Yeah, like, I think there's just something meditative really about like trying to be resourceful about what you have and like gluing the shoes back together. I don't know.
Now Vivian is engaged. Her fiancé has a high-paying job as a corporate attorney and makes much more money than she does. She says he grew up pretty poor and likes enjoying the money he has now by spending it on things like meals at fine dining restaurants. His comparative flexibility around money and his faith that they'll be okay have helped Vivian through the big purchases they've made together, like a few months ago when they bought a house. Vivian wasn't immediately upfront about her fixations around money when they first got together 6 years ago, but she says it wasn't possible to hide for long.
I think as with any new friendship or new relationship that I had at around that time, like, it came up as part of a joke. Like, she is really good at couponing.
Uh-huh.
And then I think that was the first thing he noticed was like, I'm just very good at finding deals, clipping coupons, because that's another side of it too. And then it was just like, oh, this seems like a control thing. And then I eventually like told him a few months in about my history with my eating disorder. I don't know if he had much education around what an eating disorder is or how serious it could get. But it didn't feel like I was talking to a wall or anything like that.
How did you two come to the decision on the budget for the house that you all were going to buy together? How much money you could afford to spend?
Luckily, I think our ranges were the same.
Uh-huh.
Or if not similar. So
you didn't feel like he was dragging you into a bracket that felt scary to you?
No. That said, we eventually did buy a house that was on, like, one of the cheapest houses that we visited, which I was very happy with.
In your comfort zone. Uh-huh.
In my comfort zone. But we're both happy with it.
So you share a household. How much money do you share?
So my fiance makes more money than I do. And so currently we don't have like a shared bank account. When we get married, and ironically, we're working on a prenup right now. But when we get married, it's probably going to stay roughly the same. Our mortgage comes out of a joint bank account that we both contribute to. But other than that, I see ourselves just like, when one person goes to the grocery store, we'll ask the other if we want something. If one, we'll take turns paying the restaurant bill. So, yeah, it is more control than I ever thought I would yield to someone else.
This podcast is sponsored by Cloud Optimizer.
As a business owner or IT manager, are your cloud investment costs going up and you don't know why? It's time for Cloud Optimizer. As you migrate your business to the cloud, what you're spending and why you're spending it can get a little hazy. But Cloud Optimizer clears up the mystery and puts the cloud to work for you. Cloud Optimizer starts by analyzing usage patterns, right-sizing resources, leveraging discounts you may not be aware of, implementing automation, and much more. And by reducing unnecessary expenses and maximizing performance, Cloud Optimizer guarantees you a savings of 5 times what you spend for their service. As you utilize cloud-based services more and more, you don't have to lose sight or control of your spend. You can stay agile, streamline your costs, and optimize your performance, plus save significant money with Cloud Optimizer.
Make the cloud work for you with Cloud Optimizer. Get a free assessment and find out how much you can save by going to cloudoptimizer.com. Go to cloudoptimizer.com for your free assessment. That's cloudoptimizer.com.
I'm Shankar Vedantam, here to tell you about a great mystery. That mystery is you. As the host of a podcast called Hidden Brain, I explore big questions about what it means to be human. Questions like, where do our emotions come from? Why do so many of us feel overwhelmed by modern life? How can we better understand the people around us? Discover your hidden brain. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Vivian and her fiancé are at the tail end of planning their wedding. She wanted to elope, he wanted something big, and they settled on something medium that's going to cost around $20,000. A lot, she says, but she's looking forward to it. When it comes to other conversations about money, compromise isn't always easy, especially around money and food.
One of my pet peeves about him, and I love him very much, is he will buy food and it goes bad. And that is two of my most how do you not have a mental checklist in your mind of all of the food you have at any point in time in your house?
Do you cook together?
I don't really like to anything food related I can pass. So I don't really cook. He likes to cook and he likes getting ingredients and following a new recipe. I think for me the extent of it is maybe spaghetti, maybe some salad with dressing on it. I don't get the same joy out of it as he does. And he's a big foodie.
And at the beginning, when you were saying you had a frozen meal and you were trying to eat fewer frozen meals, that's a place you're trying to get more flexible or more, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to have frozen meals every day because it's everything I need, right? I know exactly how much it costs and I know that it is somewhat balanced and I know how many calories it is and I know how much, I know what is in it. So it is the perfect safety food for me. But I recently saw a Netflix documentary called You Are What You Eat. It talked a little bit about processed food. And I was like, I cannot put that in my body.
I see.
I'm trying to get away from it, but yeah.
I just rolled right over that question. I didn't realize I was asking you something where there was, of course, it makes sense now. That totally makes sense. What's it like talking through the prenup?
It's fine. Honestly, it's one of those, it's the most expensive thing that I've ever, speaking of expensive things that I hope I never use, oddly enough, a prenup is one of them.
The legal fees of just paying a lawyer?
Yeah, exactly. But it has been a pretty transparent conversation, I will say.
Do you find, because he earns more than you, do you find that your interest is thinking about wanting to make sure you protect your own resources, or is it protecting your future self because he earns a lot more?
I think it's in a weird way, not that he needs me to look out for him. I want to protect his resources. He grew up in an environment where money was a lot more scarce than the one that I grew up in. And he has worked so hard to get to where he is and to get to the job he has that pays him handsomely. And I want him to be in a situation where where that isn't in jeopardy if we do divorce. I think it's completely fair for him to say, hey, I worked my way to this job. I kept this job. It pays me well. This is my job. This is my salary. I should keep it. And I totally agree with that now.
Is the lawyer representing you also?
Yeah. Well, no. So he has his own lawyer and I have mine, but that's at least, call me ignorant. I've never been through a divorce. I've never been through a marriage, but that is how I'm very proud of everything that he has accomplished. And I can never picture a future me where I would want to take that away from him.
Well, I think that's a way of framing it. There's another way of framing it, which is a family as an enterprise, and different people bring different resources into the family. Some are financial and some are not monetary. And it's interesting. There's something in that rationalization that in that logic that I hear from you that I don't hear you advocating for your own needs.
And maybe that is what my lawyer will help me do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess if coming out on the other side of this financial obsession and paying for a mortgage, if that has taught me anything, I would say that, and this comes from a very privileged position, but a lot of my money is in a bank account, and I will never see like those stacks of money, right? Like, to an extent, this is all an abstraction to me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there is an overcorrection there where I'm seeing it as such an abstraction that I'm not advocating for myself, especially in this prenup process. But right now, I'm not concerned about it, and I kind of think that's a win.
When did you realize that you wanted to spend the money to go back to school to become a therapist?
So you might remember this, but last year in January, there was a wave of layoffs in tech. Mm-hmm. And I work at a tech company who also had layoffs. The idea of being laid off and losing my job, as you can imagine, came with a slew of just panic. And so I actually started therapy in preparation for being laid off because I knew my mind would not be able to handle not having money coming in. Mm-hmm. When those layoffs happened and I actually kept my job, it was such a, like, I was completely inadequately prepared to actually keep my job and see people I care about lose their job. So that therapy was like useless. But the second thing too was like, I had decided that I would go back to school and become a therapist because it was something I really wanted to do if I got laid off. Uh-huh. And I would have the time to do it full time, et cetera. When I wasn't laid off, I was like, this company that I work for makes me go through like 6 rounds of interviews to get hired, but will lay me off in a mass email. Why am I letting them decide the course of my life? Like, if I want to go back to school, why don't I just try and make it work? And so I decided to like make that a priority, and I did some research, and I found a program that would be able to accommodate my my full-time work. So I'm full-time worker as well as a full-time student. And I think like just after that, I realized this money that I'm getting as part of my paycheck I've learned to think of it as a tool. And it is a tool that helps me pay for things, and it helps me keep myself healthy, and it helps me learn things. And it's something that this job will allow me to afford school to become a therapist. And that is how I can view this paycheck from now on, is like it's actually helping me get to the next stepping stone of like this career shift that I'm planning for myself.
I love that, Vivian. That is so cool.
I try my best.
That's a listener we're calling Vivian. If you have a story of one obsession or compulsion morphing into another, we want to hear from you. How did it happen? And how have your fixations served you? And how have they let you down? Send a voice memo to us at deathsexmoney@slate.com. Death, Sex, and Money is produced by Slate. Please support the production of our show by becoming a member of Slate Plus. You'll not only support our work on Death, Sex, and Money, you'll get access to new benefits, including exclusive member-only drops, like our follow-up conversation about driving with our listener, Tom. And you also can listen to us without ads or sponsor breaks. Be a part of helping us build a solid foundation at Death, Sex, and Money's new home by subscribing to Slate Plus. Just click Try Free at the top of the Death, Sex, and Money show page on Apple Podcasts, or visit slate.com/DSM Plus to get access wherever you listen. The rest of our show team is Andrew Dunn and Cameron Drews. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer. Alicia Montgomery is Slate's head of audio. Our theme music is by the Reverend John Delore and Steve Lewis. If you're new to our show, welcome. We're so glad you're here. You can find us and follow us on Instagram at DeathSexMoney. And you can get my weekly newsletter at annasale.substack.com. And reach us anytime with voice memos, pep talks, questions, or critiques at deathsexmoney@slate.com. We love hearing from you. This conversation with Vivian reminded me how much I love talking with our listeners about money, and also about how we're all figuring out how to manage our money and share it when we're in a relationship. If you didn't hear it last year, we put a link in our show notes to our episode all about weddings and figuring out how much they're worth to you.
When I look at a floral budget, I think, oh yeah, like that's actually really reasonable. And he looks at the same budget and he's like, that? For flowers?
I'm currently a resident doctor with six-figure debt, and the idea of spending a down payment on a wedding is quite overwhelming and crushing.
I have struggled with going back and forth with it, of spending as much money as we plan to and eloping somewhere, which is something he would like.
I'm Anna Sale, and this is Death, Sex, and Money from Slate.
Pulling up to Mickey D's just for drinks? Oh yeah, that's me. Nothing extra, just perfection and a straw. Coming in hot for the coldest cups on the block. Because there are drinks. Then there are drinks from McDonald's.
Ever combine an ice-cold frozen Coke with piping hot fries? Try frozen drinks any size for $1.49. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I want to thank you for listening and for all your support as we at Death, Sex, and Money have made our move to Slate. Your stories, voice memos, and emails have meant so much to the team. As part of this transition, there's a new way to support our show financially at Slate, our new home, and you'll get something special in return. Subscribe to Slate Plus, and you'll not only support our work on Death, Sex, and Money, you'll get access to new benefits, including listening to us and all of the other great shows Slate makes, like Slow Burn and Decoder Ring, without any ads or sponsor breaks. To subscribe, just click Try Free at the top of the Death, Sex, and Money show page on Apple Podcasts, or visit slate.com/DSM Plus to get access wherever you listen. Thanks.